One of the major takeaways, at least for me, from the Fallout 76 gameplay reveal was the amount of crazy and new creatures we are getting in this game. We've seen things ranging from intelligent plants that can kill you all the way to Mothman, which apparently will take on different forms. In this video, I'm going to do a comprehensive look of all of the new stuff coming. A few things you should know first beforehand. We know that 63 creatures will appear in Fallout 76. That's been confirmed multiple times through different interviews. And in addition, all of the creatures from Fallout 4 are said to be making a return with fixes. It's not entirely clear what fixes entail, but I would imagine balance changes or maybe little changes to them to make them fit into the lore. Super mutant behemoths, for example, are so large because time has passed. Fallout 76 being much earlier in the time frame means maybe you'll see super mutant behemoths, but just much smaller. And to not be redundant, I'm not going to go over all the creatures we've seen in Fallout 4. If it appeared in Fallout 4, I would just assume it's going to appear in Fallout 76. And before we start things off, a huge shout out to Katarn343. He made a very detailed Reddit post covering most of what I'm talking about today, and it's a huge asset and source for me in this video. Largely, this is just going to be a kind of videofication of that Reddit post, actually showing you some of the gameplay of those new creatures. One of the most talked about new creatures coming are the Scorched Beasts. We saw quite a bit of gameplay of these, and they seem to be very powerful. In addition to just looking pretty crazy, the main quest is actually going to be tied into these. As you probably know, you can get nukes in Fallout 76. Well, the justification for those nukes from a story perspective is they're actually meant to kind of blow up the caverns of the Scorched Beasts or lock them down under. And something else we've heard about these Scorched Beasts that kind of applies to all of the new creatures is actually the presence of events. In one interview, they talked about how in Fallout 76, the server may get an alert, oh, Scorched Beasts are attacking this area, and you can go there, take down these Scorched Beasts, and actually claim a reward. Or sometimes when trying to start a settlement or clear out a camp to get certain resources, you'll have to take down a certain kind of NPC. Not super relevant to Scorched Beasts in particular, but I figured it's worth mentioning. Then we do have the Snallygaster. This is going to be a pretty interesting one with a even more interesting name. This guy has some pseudo T-Rex hands going on. He's going to walk around on 2 feet and actually attack you with his tongue. And something important to bring up with this guy in particular, there's actually going to be a mechanic in Fallout 76 where you can create a high-level zone with nukes. So let's say you target a certain location with a nuke, all the NPCs there will seemingly be converted into new higher-level NPCs, or higher-level NPCs will simply spawn. The Snallygaster is one particular one that will appear in these high-level zones. Again, it's not entirely clear if that's a conversion from a kind of lesser version of this guy. Like maybe it starts out as a normal mole rat, and then with the mutation, he actually turns into the Snallygaster. Either way, we do know this is going to be one creature coming in high level zones. Then we do have Mega Sloths. These guys are pretty interesting. They obviously are quite similar looking to Sloths, but they actually have this weird fungi on their back that they are going to be able to spray you with. And in addition, they can throw rocks at you, similar to how Deathclaws used to. It's one that we got quite a bit of gameplay footage of, and I feel like the footage largely speaks for itself. And in that, we actually saw 2 different variants, a sluggish and a diseased variant of these. Then we do have the tank from Left 4 Dead, otherwise known as the Grafton Monster. This one also got quite a bit of screen time between its magazine and just actual combat with the player. Looks like it's going to be a pretty interesting one. Obviously, it has one massive arm. It's probably going to be one of those creatures that has a ton of health like a tank. This is going to be one of the creatures out of West Virginian folklore. People in real life have reported seeing something like the Grafton Monster. I'll have a link down below where you could actually read up more on this if you're interested. Then we have this frog or toad. It seems like it's largely just going to be a larger version of the standard frog or toad. And on its back, it seems to have a bunch of eggs or something like that, so maybe it has a mechanic similar to Marler Queens in previous games where it'll spout smaller enemies at you. And then we got the big one, Mothman, which, yes, that is actually Mothman. It doesn't seem like what you would think Mothman to look like, but what we've heard about Mothman is it'll probably take on different forms. This could be the stalking form that they've talked about. And seemingly in this form, you're not really meant to fight him, but later on, he's going to be a winged beast with piercing red eyes that prey on those in Point Pleasant, that being one of the new areas in Fallout 76. So even though this is seemingly Mothman, this doesn't seem like the combat form of him. He'll probably have a much larger and more grandiose form. Based on West Virginian lore and how they've talked about this creature, it seems like there'll probably only be one of them on the map, maybe as like one big special event or a quest tied around this. And on the Fallout 76 map, you can actually find a museum dedicated to Mothman that you should be able to explore. Then we have the Scorch. This is a pretty interesting subset of new ghouls in Fallout 76. The Scorch are going to to be a kind of more intermediate transition between a typical human and a feral ghoul. And really what it seems like is the Scorched were invented to actually have a humanoid-like character in Fallout 76 that can use weapons and armor. So the Scorched will be using different guns and predominantly melee weapons, at least based off what we've seen of them in the trailers. And it seems like this may be an alternative to raiders in Fallout 76. Then you have these mole people, or whatever you want to actually call them. There's no confirmed name for these one way or another, but what we know are they are humanoid looking creatures that seem to have a gas mask and robes on. Obviously based on where this guy's standing, he probably lives in the mine, or you'll find these around mines. In some of the different trailers of Fallout 76, it looks like that you actually get to explore some of these mines, so I imagine this is who you'll find in them. Whether or not they're aggressive or neutral to you, or whether or not they actually can speak, is totally up in the air. Then we do have the Mutated Giant B. This is going to be seemingly a hive mixed with a actual creature of some kind. More or less you see this thing walking up towards you and it has a beehive on its back. It can release bees at you. I imagine it also has some kind of melee attack. This kind of follows that same queen mentality that I mentioned with some of these other creatures, where there'll probably be a base creature that will throw smaller creatures at you, and that'll be largely the combat. So we have the Tick. This one's pretty interesting because it looks like it'll be a cool creature with a cool mechanic. The Tick is going to try and suck your blood, and when it does so, it seemingly will get larger, at least according to the concept art, although whether or not it's actually going to make it into the full game is still kind of unclear. There's going to be a regular Tick and a vile Tick, and it appears like it's actually going to be a very kind of fast-paced and fast-moving creature that will probably be really obnoxious and annoying to deal with. Then we have the Wendigo. This is going to be another one out of West Virginian folklore, seemingly based off where we see it in the trailer and some of the combat. It's going to be in the swampy areas. That kind of ties in with its lore behind it. In real life, these stories say that it's actually going to possess humans and give them an incredible lust for cannibalism, so they basically start attacking other humans to try and eat them. That would be a freaking insane mechanic if it gets implemented into the game, but we'll see whether or not that happens. Imagine you with a few of your buddies playing and the Wendigo actually gets you, and you literally just can no longer control your character for a few seconds as you try and melee attack all the people around you. Then we do have these intelligent plants that I talked about in the intro of this video. These seem pretty interesting. We don't know a ton about them or how intelligent they actually are. They appear to eat humans in some way. Whether or not they actually are aggro to you right off the bat, though, is unclear. And apparently they do have some method of communication. So those are all the main ones, but then we have a few other offbeat ones that we don't actually have images of. For example, a two-headed possum is said to be in the game, but we never actually see an image or concept art of that particular creature. Similar to that, the Flatwoods Monster is something we've heard about quite a few times, but we've never actually seen properly. There's a concept art image of it, but we don't actually know what it's going to look like in game or how close it will be to that concept. Of course, this appears to be a new alien. In the real-life West Virginian folklore, more or less there was a crashed UFO, a bunch of boys went into the forest to investigate, and then they encountered the Flatwoods Monster. I imagine this, similar to Mothman, will probably have a unique quest or story associated with it. Maybe there will be a specific event on servers. Then we have the Monster. I would take this one with a grain of salt because an image of it was used in the Noclip documentary, but the Noclip editors used that image. Bethesda never themselves said it's coming, but maybe at Noclip they saw some screenshots or gameplay of this one and just included a real-life image or seemingly real-life image of it. And the only other one that's kind of up in the air is actually the Crocodile. We see an image of kind of a crocodile playground or something like that. It looks like a water park in West Virginia, but we never actually see any crocodiles. Maybe it will just be this playground, but obviously we've had gator claws in Fallout 4, so maybe we'll get a regular kind of crocodile or mutated crocodile and gator claws in Fallout 76. So that's it. Those are all the new creatures coming with Fallout 76. Something very interesting though, that doesn't add up to 63. When you actually take all these new creatures and add all of the creatures that appeared in Fallout 4, you don't get 63 creatures. So depending on what Bethesda considers a creature and whether or not what ends up being in the game, there are roughly 10 more creatures that we have yet to see that should be coming with this game. And again, that's heavily dependent on what they consider a creature, like the Rad Chicken. Is that something that's making a return, or is that like a Far Harbor exclusive? Do they consider that a creature even? Either way, that's largely going to wrap it up for this video. As always, I thank you all for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. But before we end things off, we do have today's psychology fun fact, and for that, let's actually look at some of the background of urban legends. Why do they exist? Why do people like them? So one of the major components of myths, urban legends, or whatever it may be, is actually that your memory is reconstructed. This is something I've talked about on this channel in the past, but more or less, when you remember something, and each time you re-remember it, you are reconstructing that memory. You are literally changing what you remember. Oftentimes this will be due to more context given or somebody making a suggestion to you that makes sense. So it'll be like, oh yeah, maybe that did happen. And then a few times later, after remembering it, you'll be like, yeah, that is how it happened. The way this works is you have a base trace memory. That is, like, in the purest form, what actually happened, or at least what you actually saw. Then when you re-remember something, you are accessing that base trace memory, but in addition, some of the context is added in. Let's say you heard what your friend saw, or what your other friend thought he saw. That's going to be added in with your trace memory, and as you re-remember this, you're going to have now a newly formed memory. The next time you remember it, you're going to access not just that trace memory, but all that other contextual information also. And over time, you can kind of see how something that was scary, but explained quite simply, can conform into something a little bit more complex and such an urban legend. In addition, people simply like drama and disgust. There's a study that wanted to see how people given a story would actually share it and what story would get shared the most. So the story went that somebody went on vacation, they had a bunch of photographs, and as they developed those photographs, they found on their camera that a hotel worker actually took a picture of their toothbrush next to their, and either it was their fingernail, their armpit, or their anus. And what the researchers found was the story was shared more if it was actually the anus. That was the most shared story, the armpit being the second one, and then the fingernail, not being as extreme or dramatic, was shared the least out of the three. Either way, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this one. As always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.